It was 1842. P.T. Barnum introduced the world to a creature that was half beautiful myth and half grotesque nightmare. He called it the Fiji Mermaid. Now, forget what you're picturing. This was not the flowing-haired siren from fairy tales. Barnum's mermaid had the head of a withered monkey, the torso of a shriveled corpse, and the tail of a fish. It was small, mummified, and deeply unsettling. But Barnum? He didn't just throw it in a glass cage. He built entire mystery around it. First, he planted fake stories in newspapers, anonymous letters from scientists claiming a genuine mermaid had been discovered in the South Pacific. Then he created a fictional British naturalist named Dr. J. Griffin and hired an actor to play him, complete with lectures, forged documents, and a fake backstory. By the time the mermaid reached Barnum's American Museum in New York, the buzz was deafening. People lined up and down the block to see it for themselves. Some were amazed, some were disgusted, everyone was talking. And that's exactly what Barnum wanted. Phineas Taylor Barnum was born on July 5, 1810, in the quiet town of Bethel, Connecticut. His father, Philo Barnum, was a tailor and tavern keeper known for his practicality and stern demeanor. His mother, Irena Taylor Barnum, was equally no-nonsense, though she had a hint of storytelling in her blood, something her son would later amplify to world-changing levels. From the outset, P.T. Barnum was caught between two worlds, a life of modest, honest work and a mind forever seeking novelty, wonder, and fortune. When Philo died in 1826, 15-year-old Barnum was left to support his family. He had little formal education, but an exceptional instinct for making money and human behavior. He began selling lottery tickets and started his own newspaper, the Herald of Freedom, where he championed free speech and railed against political corruption. The paper stirred controversy, even landing Barnum in jail, where he remained for 2 months for libel, an early sign of his appetite for risk and publicity. He married Charity Hallett on November 8, 1829, a quiet, religious woman who would remain his steadfast partner for over 4 decades. Despite their differences, he was flamboyant and driven by spectacle, she reserved and humble. The marriage grounded him during his tumultuous rise to fame. Charity was described as devout, reserved, and practical, the opposite of her theatrical husband. Though she avoided the spotlight and disapproved of some of his more outrageous stunts, she remained his quiet anchor. They had their share of tensions, particularly due to Barnum's frequent absences and obsession with work, but they remained married for over 40 years until Charity's death in 1873. Barnum often acknowledged he was not the easiest man to live with. In his memoirs, he wrote that Charity bore with my faults and failures with patience and prayer. He respected her, even if they lived in largely separate emotional worlds. Despite their differences, their bond endured decades of upheaval, fire, financial ruin, and success. P.T. and Charity had 4 daughters together. Caroline was the eldest and the one who had the most visible connection to her father's public life. She accompanied him and General Tom Thumb, who we will talk about later, on part of their European tour in the 1840s. Her presence helped Barnum present a wholesome, family-centered image during their royal visits and public appearances. Helen, the second daughter, maintained a much lower public profile. Like her sister, she likely enjoyed the comforts provided by her father's growing wealth, including travel and private education. It's believed Helen was close to her mother, Charity, and inherited some of her more reserved nature. Frances was the third daughter and reportedly the most intellectual of the 4. She was described as thoughtful and independent, qualities that reflected both her father's ambition and her mother's quiet strength. Pauline was the youngest child, born later in Barnum and Charity's marriage. Tragically, she died in infancy or early childhood. Both Petey and Charity struggled heavily with the death of their daughter. The name Pauline Taylor was likely chosen to honor Barnum's mother, Irena Taylor, and reflected the couple's continued efforts to preserve family legacy in the midst of Barnum's rising fame. Barnum's first taste of large-scale success came in 1835 with the exhibition of a woman named Joyce Heth. She was a formerly enslaved woman who Barnum claimed was 161 years old and had been George Washington's childhood nurse. Her frail condition and wrinkled skin added eerie credibility to the claim, and Barnum charged eager crowds to hear her speak and sing hymns. Even though slavery was abolished in Pennsylvania and New York, Barnum found a loophole to rent Joyce. He leased her for $1,000 a year. But Joyce Heth was more than a human exhibit. She was Barnum's first true lesson in the power of storytelling. He fabricated tales, printed fake interviews, and even anonymously spread rumors that she might be an automaton. When curiosity began to wane, Barnum fanned the flames by inviting medical experts to perform a public examination, charging admission 50 cents. The examination revealed Heth was likely no older than 80. Many were appalled. Others marveled at his audacity. Barnum didn't mind either reaction. What mattered was that people were talking. He had found his calling. Not deception, he insisted, but humbug, a theatrical exaggeration in the name of entertainment. In 1841, Barnum made his boldest move yet. He purchased Scudder's American Museum in New York City. It was a dusty collection of taxidermy, relics, and oddities, barely surviving in the bustling city. Barnum revamped it from top to bottom, renaming it Barnum's American Museum and turned it into the epicenter of the 19th century spectacle. Interestingly, this arena would later become the famous Madison Square Garden. The museum offered everything from live performances and wax figures to scientific curiosities and moral dramas. Here, Barnum introduced the world to the Fiji Mermaid, mentioned in the beginning, and General Tom Thumb, or Charles Stratton, a young dwarf with charisma far larger than his physical size. P.T. Barnum met the boy in 1842 when he was 4 years old. He was tiny, barely 2 feet tall, but full of wit and charm. He then aged the boy up to 11 years old, dressed him in military clothes, and taught him how to sing and dance. General Tom Thumb toured through England, France, and beyond. He met Queen Victoria, who was so delighted by his performance that she invited him back for a private encore. He sipped wine with nobility, imitated Napoleon, and even charmed King Louis Philippe of France with a mock duel using miniature pistols. Tom Thumb became a millionaire, not just a sideshow act, but a partner in the enterprise. He toured for decades, became one of the most beloved entertainers in the world, and even had a lavish wedding that drew thousands of guests, including celebrities and reporters, like it was a royal affair. Barnum's museum blurred the lines between fact and fiction, education and entertainment. He changed exhibits frequently, used gaslights to keep the museum open into the night, and employed sensational posters and newspaper ads to fuel attendance. By the mid-1840s, it attracted over 15,000 visitors a day to browse 850,000 other curiosities that Barnum collected after Joyce's death at 25 cents a trip. Some of the curiosities in the museum included a man dubbed a creature found in the wilds of Africa, supposed to be a mixture of the wild native African and the orangutan, a kind of man-monkey. The offensive poster advertised this creature read, "For want a positive name, the creature was called What Is It?" In actuality, What Is It was simply an African-American man named William Henry Johnson. Before joining the show, he worked as a cook for another showman in Barnum's hometown. It wasn't uncommon for Barnum to make use of people from other races that served as these curiosities. They included the Aztec children, who were actually from El Salvador, to the real but exoticized Siamese twins, Chang and Eng. This way to egress. That's what the sign said. Bold letters hanging just above a doorway inside P.T. Barnum's famous American Museum in New York City. Curious visitors, thinking the egress was some exotic new exhibit, would follow the sign, only to find themselves suddenly outside on the street with no re-entry allowed unless they paid again. Clever? Ruthless? Pure genius. In 1850, Barnum ventured into high culture by promoting Jenny Lind, the Swedish nightingale. Though virtually unknown in the US, he orchestrated one of the most brilliant marketing campaigns in American history. By the time she arrived, she was a household name. The tour grossed over $700,000, a staggering sum at the time. But Barnum's ambitions outpaced his resources. He invested heavily in a failed real estate venture in East Bridgeport, Connecticut, and by 1856 he was bankrupt. Undeterred, he spent years giving lectures on temperance and perseverance, slowly rebuilding his finances and reputation. Disaster struck again in 1865 when his beloved museum burned to the ground. Barnum rebuilt. Then in 1868 it burned again. Still, he persisted. The fire symbolized his life, dramatic, destructive, but never final. In 1871, at the age of 61, Barnum launched a new venture that would redefine entertainment, a traveling circus. Partnering with William Cameron Coup, he created the P.T. Barnum's Grand Traveling Museum, Menagerie, Caravan, and Hippodrome, a name as extravagant as the show itself. The circus featured acrobats, clowns, exotic animals, trained elephants, and human curiosities. It toured in massive tents, transported by railway, reaching towns and villages that had never experienced such grandeur. Barnum's slogan, "The greatest show on earth," wasn't just marketing, it was a national event. Eventually, Barnum partnered with his rival, James A. Bailey, to form the Barnum and Bailey Circus, a titan of entertainment that toured the world. The show dazzled audiences with acts of wonder and peril, from the tightrope feats of Madame Lala to the gentle might of Jumbo, the beloved elephant Barnum imported from England. Jumbo was initially the largest elephant in captivity in the London Zoo. P.T. Barnum then showed up to the zoo with $10,000 cash in hand and an offer the zoo couldn't refuse. People were initially outraged and even begged Queen Victoria to intervene, but it was all in vain. P.T. Barnum then announced that the elephant was too big for England and was making its way to America. Though Barnum became a cultural icon, his legacy remains complex. Critics point to his exploitation of people with disabilities and his blurred lines between truth and showmanship. Barnum insisted he was not a liar, but a creator of joy and amazement, using exaggeration as a tool, not deceit as a weapon. Even though he sounded like a remarkable man, many people were outraged by his way of doing business and making money. Beyond the stage, Barnum was a philanthropist, reformer, and civic leader. He served as mayor of Bridgeport, supported abolition, funded schools and libraries, and gave generously to the community. He was a deeply moral man who also saw the world as one grand performance. He published several books, including The Life of P.T. Barnum and The Art of Money Getting, offering insights into his philosophy of success. He believed in hard work, imagination, and most of all, the public's right to wonder. P.T. Barnum died on April 7, 1891, at the age of 80. True to form, he reportedly asked to read his obituaries before he passed, relishing the final applause while still alive. His death marked the end of an era, but not the end of his influence. Barnum's name lives on in theaters, books, museums, and pop culture. The 2017 film, The Greatest Showman, reignited global fascination with his life, albeit through a heavily romanticized lens. Still, the core remains. Barnum was a master of turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. He once said, "The noblest art is that of making others happy." In this, he succeeded beyond measure. He changed how we experience entertainment, how we market to the masses, and how we tell stories that capture the imagination. P.T. Barnum wasn't just a showman, he was the show. And even today, the curtain never quite falls on his legacy. That's all for this video. What do you think of P.T. Barnum? Do you think he was a marketing and showman genius? Or an insensitive exploiter? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to History Snob for more cool historical content. Thanks for watching.